How did the world's richest people actually get rich? Was it hard work and determination, innovation and genius? Or is there something else, something more specific and replicable that separates billionaires from the rest of us? Sam Wilkin's Wealth Secrets: How the Rich Got Rich takes a refreshingly analytical approach to extreme wealth. Rather than motivational platitudes or generic business advice, Wilkin, an economist who studies the ultra-wealthy, examines the actual mechanisms through which the world's greatest fortunes were built. His findings are surprising, sometimes uncomfortable, but always illuminating. The New York Times called Wilkin a knowledgeable guide to the world's greatest fortunes, with thoughtful, playful prose. This isn't dry academic analysis or breathless hero worship. Wilkin examines billionaires with the curiosity of a scientist and the wit of a storyteller, revealing patterns that most people never notice. His central insight challenges conventional wisdom. The super rich don't just work harder or smarter than everyone else. They exploit specific structural advantages, what economists call market power, that allow capturing disproportionate value. These advantages come from monopolies, regulatory capture, unique access, or other barriers that prevent competition from eroding profits. This doesn't mean extreme wealth is purely luck, or that billionaires don't work hard. It means that hard work and talent, while necessary, aren't sufficient. The crucial ingredient is positioning yourself in situations where market power exists or can be created. Understanding these structural dynamics reveals how wealth actually works at the highest levels. Over the next 30 minutes, we're exploring Wilkin's analysis of how the rich actually got rich. You'll learn the specific mechanisms that create extreme wealth. You'll discover why some industries produce billionaires while others don't. You'll understand the role of monopoly, regulation, and market power. And you'll see which lessons apply to building wealth at any scale. This is about understanding wealth creation through rigorous analysis rather than inspiration. Let's dive in. Chapter 1: The Monopoly Secret. Wilkin's first and most important secret is that extreme wealth almost always involves some form of monopoly or market power. This is uncomfortable because we're taught that competition and free markets are good, while monopolies are bad. But from an individual wealth-building perspective, monopoly is extraordinarily profitable. A monopoly means you control something others want, but can't easily get elsewhere. This allows charging premium prices without losing customers to competitors. The profit margins in monopolistic situations dwarf competitive markets. A company operating in a truly competitive market might earn 5 to 10% profit margins. A company with monopoly power might earn 40 to 60% margins. Wilkin examines how the world's richest people achieved monopoly positions. Bill Gates and Microsoft dominated operating systems through network effects. The more people used Windows, the more developers created Windows software, which made more people use Windows. This virtuous cycle created near monopoly that competitors couldn't break. Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook similarly achieved monopoly through network effects. The more people joined Facebook, the more valuable it became to each user, which attracted more people. Once everyone you know is on one platform, switching to a competitor becomes impractical, even if the competitor is better. Warren Buffett invests specifically in companies with moats, competitive advantages that protect them from competition. These moats might be brand strength, Coca-Cola. Regulatory advantages, utilities, network effects, credit cards, or switching costs, enterprise software. Buffett explicitly seeks monopolistic characteristics because that's where sustainable profits exist. Carlos Slim, the Mexican telecom billionaire, built wealth through actual monopoly, controlling the vast majority of Mexico's telecommunications infrastructure. His monopoly allowed charging high prices with minimal service quality because customers had no alternatives. While controversial, this strategy created one of the world's largest fortunes. Wilkin emphasizes that monopolies come in various forms. Pure monopolies, single providers of essential goods, are rare and often regulated. More common are oligopolies, where a few companies dominate an industry with limited competition, or local monopolies, where you're the only provider in a specific geographic area, or monopolies over specific niches or customer segments. The practical question is, how do you create or exploit monopoly power for yourself? Wilkin identifies several approaches. First, be first to market in a new category where network effects or switching costs will create barriers to competition. Second, operate in regulated industries where regulations limit competition. Third, serve markets too small for large competitors to bother with, but large enough to support your business. Fourth, build brand or reputation advantages that prevent competitors from taking customers even with better prices. Wilkin also addresses the ethical dimension. Monopolies are controversial because they often involve extracting value from customers and society rather than creating it. The telecom monopolist who charges high prices for poor service is getting rich by exploiting captive customers, not by creating value. This raises questions about whether such wealth creation is admirable even if effective. However, Wilkin notes that some monopolies create genuine value. The first company to create a revolutionary product has temporary monopoly that rewards innovation. Brands built through consistent quality earn monopoly-like pricing power legitimately. Patents reward inventors with temporary monopolies to incentivize innovation. The key insight is that extreme wealth correlates strongly with market power. In competitive markets, profits get competed away. In markets with monopoly characteristics, profits can be sustained and scaled to extreme levels. Understanding this dynamic explains why some business models produce billionaires, while others produce comfortable livings, but rarely extreme wealth. Chapter 2. The Regulation Secret. Wilkin's second secret is that many fortunes are built not by fighting government regulation, but by mastering it. Regulations, while often burdensome, create barriers to entry that protect incumbents from competition. Those who understand and navigate regulation successfully can build monopolistic positions. The regulatory advantage works several ways. First, regulations create compliance costs that burden small competitors more than large established players. A regulation requiring $1 million in compliance costs is a rounding error for a billion-dollar company, but potentially fatal for a startup. This asymmetry protects large players from new competition. Second, complex regulations create expertise advantages. Companies that master regulatory requirements gain competitive edge because navigating regulation becomes a barrier to entry. Competitors must not only have a better product, but also must master regulatory compliance, a dual barrier that protects market share. Third, regulations sometimes explicitly limit competition through licensing, zoning, or other restrictions. Taxi medallions, broadcast licenses, and liquor licenses are examples where regulation creates artificial scarcity that those holding licenses exploit profitably. Wilkin examines how fortunes were built through regulatory mastery. In healthcare, pharmacy chains that navigated insurance reimbursement regulations, licensing requirements, and pharmacy regulations built valuable businesses protected from simple competition. In finance, firms that mastered financial regulations gained advantages over less sophisticated competitors. In real estate, developers who understood zoning laws, environmental regulations, and permitting processes built fortunes by successfully developing properties where regulatory barriers defeated other developers. The development profits came not just from construction, but from navigating regulatory complexity. Wilkin also discusses regulatory capture, when industries influence regulations to favor incumbents. The wealthy sometimes lobby for regulations that appear to serve public interest, but actually create barriers protecting their businesses. For example, licensing requirements might be framed as protecting consumers, but effectively limit competition and protect existing businesses. The practical application depends on your risk tolerance and ethical framework. Working in heavily regulated industries, healthcare, finance, energy, real estate, provides opportunities to build competitive advantages through regulatory expertise. Investing time understanding regulatory frameworks in your industry creates valuable knowledge competitors may lack. However, Wilkin notes the ethical complexity. Using regulatory expertise to build wealth is different from using wealth to shape regulations in your favor. The first is skill-based competition. The second is potentially corrupt influence. The line isn't always clear, but the distinction matters. He also emphasizes that regulatory advantages can disappear through deregulation. Industries built on regulatory protection face existential threats when regulations change. The taxi industry's medallion system collapsed when ride-sharing deregulated transportation. Any wealth-building strategy dependent on regulation requires monitoring political changes. Chapter 3. The Scale Secret. Wilkin's third secret is that extreme wealth requires extreme scale. Comfortable wealth can be built through small businesses serving local markets. Billionaire wealth requires operating at massive scale, serving millions of customers, controlling vast resources, or creating products used globally. The mathematics of scale are straightforward. Earning $1 million in profit requires either selling 100 products at $10,000 profit each, 1,000 products at $1,000 profit each, or 100,000 products at $100 profit each, $1,000 profit each, or 1 million products at $1 profit each. The first two approaches work for comfortable living but rarely create extreme wealth. The third approach, massive volume at smaller per unit profits, is how most billionaires built fortunes. Walmart's Sam Walton built wealth through scale. Individual store profit margins were modest, but operating thousands of stores generated billions in total profit. The competitive advantage came from scale itself. Larger volumes allowed negotiating better supplier prices, spreading fixed costs, and investing in logistics that smaller competitors couldn't match. Amazon's Jeff Bezos similarly built wealth through scale. Early years showed minimal or negative profits as Amazon prioritized growth over profitability. But once scale was achieved, even small profit margins on huge volume generated enormous wealth. The scale itself created advantages. Better prices from suppliers, more customer data, greater logistics efficiency. Wilkin explains that scale creates network effects and economies of scale that produce competitive moats. The largest player can operate more efficiently than smaller competitors, widening the competitive gap over time. This dynamic creates winner-take-most markets where the largest player captures disproportionate value. The challenge is achieving scale. Most businesses never grow beyond local or regional operations. Wilkin identifies requirements for scaling product or service that can be replicated across markets, business model that improves with scale, lower costs, or better quality at higher volume, and sufficient capital to fund growth before achieving profitability. Technology businesses scale more easily than traditional businesses because software and digital products have minimal marginal costs. Creating software for one customer or 1 million customers requires similar development effort. The costs don't scale linearly with customers. This explains why tech produces disproportionate numbers of billionaires. Wilkin also discusses the personal implications of pursuing scale. Building a lifestyle business that provides comfortable income is very different from building a scalable business aimed at extreme growth. The first prioritizes profitability early and owner quality of life. The second prioritizes growth, often accepting years of losses or minimal profitability to achieve scale. The practical question is whether pursuing scale aligns with your goals. If extreme wealth is your objective, you must pursue business models capable of extreme scale. If work-life balance and sustainable income matter more, a lifestyle business might be preferable despite limited wealth potential. Chapter 4. The Timing and Luck Secret. Wilkin candidly discusses luck's role in extreme wealth, a topic most wealth books avoid. While skill and effort matter, timing and fortunate circumstances play undeniable roles in who becomes ultra-wealthy. The most obvious luck factor is birth timing relative to technological or economic shifts. Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and other tech billionaires were born at exactly the right time to be young adults when personal computing emerged. Too much older, and they'd have been established in other careers. Too much younger, and they'd have missed the ground floor opportunities. Warren Buffett acknowledges his luck. Being born in America in 1930 positioned him perfectly to invest during America's greatest economic expansion. His skills mattered enormously, but he readily admits that similar skills in a different time and place wouldn't have produced similar wealth. Wilkin examines how economic cycles affect wealth creation. Real estate fortunes are often built by buying during busts and selling during booms. Those who happen to have capital and courage during the 2008 to 2010 bust, when real estate crashed, built enormous wealth as markets recovered. Those who had capital but invested before the crash often lost fortunes. Regulatory and political changes create arbitrary winners and losers. When China liberalized its economy, those positioned to exploit new opportunities became billionaires. When industries are privatized, those with access to purchase state assets at favorable terms capture enormous value. These opportunities depend on being in the right place at the right moment. Wilkin emphasizes that acknowledging luck doesn't diminish achievement. The successful are generally skilled, hard-working, and strategic. But among many skilled, hard-working, strategic people, luck often determines who reaches extreme wealth. The best entrepreneur with poor timing often fails, while a mediocre entrepreneur with excellent timing succeeds. The practical implication isn't fatalism. It's realistic assessment of probability. You can increase wealth-building success by developing skills, working hard, and making strategic decisions. But recognizing that luck plays significant roles means avoiding excessive risk-taking that could be catastrophic if luck doesn't cooperate. Wilkin also discusses creating luck through positioning. You can't control when technological shifts occur, but you can position yourself in industries where shifts are likely and maintain readiness to exploit opportunities when they appear. This manufactured luck comes from strategic positioning that increases probability of being in the right place when opportunities emerge. Chapter 5. The Innovation Trap. One of Wilkin's most counterintuitive insights is that innovation alone rarely creates extreme wealth. We celebrate inventors and innovators, but most inventors don't get rich. The wealth typically goes to those who commercialize, scale, or monopolize innovations, not those who create them. History provides countless examples. The inventors of the telephone, television, and computer didn't become the wealthiest from their innovations. Instead, wealth went to those who built monopolistic positions in commercializing these technologies. Alexander Graham Bell founded AT&T, which became wealthy through monopoly, not through the telephone invention itself. In technology, the first mover is rarely the winner. Search engines existed before Google, social networks before Facebook, smartphones before iPhone. The winners weren't first innovators, but those who perfected and monopolized the categories. Being best and dominant beats being first. Wilkin explains why innovation alone doesn't create wealth. Competitive markets compete away profits. If you invent something valuable but can't prevent competition, competitors will copy your innovation and compete on price until profits disappear. The fortune goes not to the inventor, but to whoever achieves monopoly protection. Patents theoretically protect inventors, but most patents are either narrow enough to circumvent or expire before the inventor can fully exploit them. The rare patents that create lasting wealth, key pharmaceutical patents, for example, are valuable precisely because they create temporary monopoly protection. The practical lesson is that if you're innovative, you must think beyond innovation to commercialization and competitive protection. How will you prevent competition from destroying your profits? Can you achieve scale quickly enough to create network effects? Can you secure regulatory advantages? Can you build brand loyalty that prevents competitors from stealing customers? Wilkin shares examples of innovators who became wealthy by combining innovation with monopoly protection. Thomas Edison wasn't just an inventor. He was a master at patenting, commercializing, and monopolizing his innovations. Steve Jobs combined innovation with brand building and ecosystem lock-in that created sustained competitive advantages. The difficult truth is that being a pure inventor or innovator is often less lucrative than being a skilled commercializer and monopolist. This explains why many inventors die poor, while business people who commercialize their inventions become wealthy. From a wealth-building perspective, commercialization and market power beat innovation. Chapter 6. The Network and Access Secret. Wilkin examines how privileged access and networks contribute to extreme wealth. While uncomfortable to acknowledge, many fortunes are built through access to opportunities, capital, or markets unavailable to others. The most obvious form his inherited wealth and connections. Children of wealthy families have access to capital, networks, education, and opportunities that others lack. Many billionaires came from upper middle class or wealthy families, providing launching advantages. While some billionaires genuinely came from poverty, they're notable for being exceptional rather than typical. Beyond family wealth, access to elite networks matters enormously. Attending elite universities provides access to networks of talented, ambitious people who become future business partners, investors, or customers. The value isn't just education, it's lifelong network effects. In finance and investing, access to exclusive deal flow is crucial. Private equity, venture capital, and hedge fund opportunities aren't publicly available. Those with access to these deals and funds significantly outperform average investors simply through access advantages. Wilkin discusses how geographic location creates access advantages. Being in Silicon Valley during the tech boom provided access to capital, talent, and opportunities unavailable elsewhere. Being in New York provides access to financial opportunities. Being in Washington provides access to government contracts and influence. Location determines opportunity access. He also examines how access to capital itself creates advantages. Starting a business with family money or wealthy investors fundamentally differs from bootstrapping. Adequate capital allows surviving early losses, making strategic investments, and operating until achieving profitability. Undercapitalized businesses often fail, not from bad business models, but from insufficient runway. The practical implication is that building access and networks is itself wealth-building work. This might mean pursuing education at institutions that provide network access, relocating to cities where opportunities concentrate, actively networking with successful people, or seeking mentors who provide access to opportunities. However, Wilkin acknowledges that access advantages are inherently unfair. Those born with access have easier paths to wealth than equally talented people without access. This doesn't mean wealth building is impossible without privileged access, but it's typically harder and requires more exceptional talent or luck. The ethical question is how to think about using access advantages. If you have privileged access, refusing to use it doesn't help those without access. It just wastes your advantages. Using advantages while acknowledging them and ideally working to expand access for others seems more constructive. Chapter 7. The Risk-Taking Secret. Wilkin examines risk-taking among the ultra-wealthy and finds that billionaires take bigger risks than average people, but often with asymmetric payoffs where downside is limited, while upside is unlimited. The key insight is that extreme wealth requires taking actions with potential for extreme outcomes. Conservative strategies that avoid risk also avoid opportunities for extraordinary returns. Building comfortable wealth might be achievable through conservative approaches. Building extreme wealth almost always requires taking substantial risks. However, successful risk-taking among the wealthy is calculated, not reckless. They take risks in areas where they have expertise, information advantages, or control over outcomes. They structure deals to limit personal downside, using other people's money, corporate structures that protect personal assets, or hedging strategies that cap losses. Wilkin shares how many billionaires risked everything at crucial moments, betting their entire fortune on business ventures, taking on massive debt to fund expansion, or making concentrated investments in single opportunities. These bets paid off, creating extreme wealth. But for every successful bet, many similar bets failed catastrophically. The psychological dimension is that willingness to risk losing everything differentiates the ultra-wealthy from the comfortable. Most people reach a certain wealth level and shift to preservation mode, unwilling to risk what they've accumulated. Billionaires repeatedly risk existing wealth to pursue even greater wealth. Wilkin notes that risk tolerance might be partly innate temperament. Some people are naturally comfortable with uncertainty and risk. Others aren't. However, risk tolerance can be increased through experiencing and surviving risks, building confidence in ability to navigate uncertain situations. The practical application requires honest self-assessment. Are you willing to take risks required for extreme wealth? If not, pursuing billionaire wealth is unlikely regardless of skills or opportunities. If yes, the question becomes taking intelligent risks with asymmetric payoffs rather than gambling. Chapter 8. The Persistence. Secret. Wilkin's final major insight is that extreme wealth building typically requires decades of sustained effort. Overnight success stories are usually myths. Closer examination reveals years or decades of work before breakthrough success. Warren Buffett began investing in his early teens and built wealth over 7 decades. Bill Gates founded Microsoft in his 20s and spent decades building it into a monopoly. Jeff Bezos founded Amazon in his 30s and spent 25 years building it into what it is today. Extreme wealth is usually the culmination of extremely long effort. The persistence requirement has several implications. First, you need to choose directions you can sustain pursuing for decades. If you hate your industry or business model, you won't persist long enough to build extreme wealth. Second, you need strategies for maintaining motivation through years when progress seems slow. Third, you need health and longevity to pursue multi-decade wealth building. Wilkin examines why persistence matters for extreme wealth specifically. Comfortable wealth can be built relatively quickly through high-income careers or successful businesses, but building the scale, monopoly advantages, and market position required for extreme wealth takes many years. Network effects take time to build. Regulatory advantages take time to establish. Brand loyalty develops slowly. The compounding effect also requires time. Investment returns compound most dramatically over decades. Business advantages compound. Each success makes future success more likely. Reputation compounds. Established track records create opportunities and trust unavailable to newcomers. But all compounding requires time. Wilkin also discusses persistence through failures and setbacks. Nearly every billionaire experienced significant failures: business bankruptcies, rejected ideas, market crashes. The distinguishing characteristic is persisting after failures rather than avoiding failures. Those who quit after setbacks never reach extreme wealth, even if they had potential. The practical lesson is that if extreme wealth is your goal, you must be prepared for decades-long pursuit. This means choosing strategies and industries you can sustain for 20 to 40 years. It means maintaining physical and mental health for long careers. It means developing psychological resilience to persist through inevitable difficulties. Lessons for ordinary wealth builders. Wilkin concludes by addressing what ordinary people can learn from how the ultra-rich got rich. Most readers won't build billion-dollar fortunes, but the principles behind extreme wealth apply at all scales. First, seek market power at whatever scale you operate. You don't need global monopoly. Even local dominance or niche expertise creates pricing power. The dentist who becomes known as the best in town can charge premium prices. The consultant with deep expertise in a specific niche avoids commodity pricing. Find ways to differentiate and protect yourself from pure price competition. Second, understand and leverage regulations in your industry. Regulatory expertise creates competitive advantages available to those who invest time understanding complex rules. This might mean becoming the go-to person for navigating specific regulations, finding opportunities created by regulatory gaps, or building businesses in regulated industries where barriers protect from competition. Third, think about scale within your realistic scope. You probably won't build Amazon, but could you create a business model that serves 1,000 customers instead of 100? Could you create digital products or services that scale better than pure service businesses? Thinking about scalability at your level increases wealth potential. Fourth, acknowledge and leverage luck through positioning. You can't control when opportunities appear, but can position yourself where opportunities are likely. This might mean working in growing industries, living in cities with opportunity concentration, or maintaining skills that will be valuable if anticipated changes occur. Fifth, focus on commercialization and competitive advantage, not just innovation. If you create something valuable, immediately think about how to protect competitive position. Can you build it faster than competitors can copy? Can you establish brand loyalty? Can you achieve scale advantages? Innovation without competitive protection rarely creates lasting wealth. Sixth, build and leverage networks deliberately. Surround yourself with ambitious, successful people. Attend events where opportunities and partnerships develop. Provide value to your network so others want to help you. Access and relationships accelerate wealth building at any scale. Seventh, take calculated risks proportional to your goals. If you're comfortable with your current wealth and lifestyle, conservative strategies make sense. If you want substantially more wealth, you need to take proportionally larger risks. Match risk-taking to ambition. Eighth, commit for the long term. Even if you're not building billion-dollar wealth, building substantial wealth takes years or decades. Choose paths you can sustain pursuing for 10 to 20 years minimum. Develop habits and systems that maintain progress over long periods. Wilkin emphasizes that these principles don't guarantee wealth. Luck and circumstances matter too much for guarantees, but they substantially improve odds by aligning your efforts with how wealth is actually created, rather than following conventional wisdom that often doesn't match reality. So, there you have it. Sam Wilkin's rigorous analysis of how the rich actually got rich. From monopoly and market power to regulatory mastery, from the necessity of scale to the role of luck and timing, from the innovation trap to network advantages, from calculated risk-taking to decades of persistence. What makes Wilkin's analysis valuable is its unflinching honesty. He doesn't pretend that billionaires succeeded purely through hard work and merit. He acknowledges the roles of monopoly power, regulatory advantage, privileged access, and luck. This realistic analysis is more useful than motivational myths because it describes reality rather than inspiration. The uncomfortable truth is that extreme wealth often involves advantages ordinary people find distasteful: monopolies, regulatory capture, inherited access. But understanding how wealth actually works at the highest levels provides insights applicable at any level. You don't need billion-dollar monopolies to benefit from understanding market power, competitive advantages, and strategic positioning. The key insight is that extreme wealth requires structural advantages, not just hard work and talent. Hard work and talent are necessary but insufficient. The crucial element is positioning yourself in situations where market power, regulatory advantages, scale effects, or other structural factors allow capturing disproportionate value. Understanding this dynamic transforms how you think about wealth building. Here's your action plan. First, analyze your current work or business through Wilkin's framework. Do you have any market power or competitive advantages? Are you operating in a commodity market where competition destroys profits? What would it take to create defensible advantages? Second, evaluate your industry for a structural wealth-building potential. Does it allow scaling? Do regulations create barriers that protect market share? Are network effects possible? Do brand or reputation advantages develop? Industries with these characteristics create better wealth-building opportunities than purely competitive industries. Third, assess your positioning for luck. Are you in locations, industries, or networks where opportunities are likely to appear? Are you developing skills that will be valuable if anticipated changes occur? Can you improve your positioning to increase probability of being in the right place when opportunities emerge? Fourth, consider your time horizon. Are you thinking in decades or years? Extreme wealth requires extremely long-term commitment. If that doesn't align with your goals or temperament, adjust ambitions accordingly. There's no shame in pursuing comfortable wealth rather than extreme wealth, but the strategies differ. Finally, build competitive advantages deliberately, whether through expertise, relationships, reputation, or market positioning. Create reasons why customers should choose you and stay with you rather than going to competitors. These advantages, compounded over years, create wealth. Remember Wilkin's central message: wealth creation follows predictable patterns related to market power, scale, timing, and persistence. Understanding these patterns doesn't guarantee wealth, but ignorance of them almost guarantees you won't build extreme wealth. Knowledge is power, particularly when it's realistic knowledge rather than comforting myths. Thanks for watching this analytical deep dive into how the rich actually got rich. If Wilkin's rigorous, realistic approach gave you new insights, smash that like button and subscribe for more content that tells you how wealth really works rather than how we wish it worked. Drop a comment sharing which wealth secret surprised you most. And remember, extreme wealth is rare and difficult, requiring unusual combinations of skill, positioning, and luck. But understanding how it actually works allows making better strategic decisions at whatever level you're building wealth. The principles scale, even if the outcomes don't. Now go apply these insights to your own wealth-building journey. Until next time, seek market power, build scale, position for luck, and persist relentlessly.